had just finished my freshman year of college and was home for the summer, eager to make some extra cash. When Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor, asked if I could babysit her 2 kids for the night, I jumped at the chance. An easy job, I thought. Just 2 kids, a quiet house, and a few hours of Netflix after they went to bed. The Thompsons lived in an older house, the kind with creaky floors and narrow hallways. I arrived at around 6 p.m., and Mrs. Thompson greeted me warmly. She gave me a quick tour, introduced me to Tommy, who was 5, and Emily, who was 3, and went over the usual instructions. Bedtime was at 8 p.m., snacks were in the kitchen, and the emergency numbers were on the fridge. Easy enough. The kids were sweet, and the evening went smoothly. We played some games, watched a bit of TV, and had snacks. By 7:45, I was getting them ready for bed. Tommy insisted on a bedtime story, so I read them one of their favorites and tucked them in. By 8:30, both kids were sound asleep. I settled onto the couch with my phone, scrolling through social media and enjoying the quiet. The house seemed so still compared to the noise of college dorms. I almost fell asleep myself when I heard a soft thumping noise from upstairs. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just the house settling. But then it came again, more rhythmic this time, like footsteps. I paused, listening intently. Maybe one of the kids had gotten up? I decided to check, just in case. Tommy and Emily's rooms were at the end of the hall, their doors slightly ajar. I peeked in on Tommy first. He was sprawled out on his bed, snoring softly. I crossed the hall to Emily's room. She was still in bed, her little face peaceful. Feeling a bit silly, I turned to head back downstairs when I heard it again, louder this time, coming from the attic above me. I froze. The Thompsons hadn't mentioned anything about the attic. I hadn't even noticed a door to it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started searching the upstairs hallway for an attic entrance. Finally, I spotted a small, square hatch in the ceiling near the end of the hall. A cord dangled down, invitingly. I hesitated, feeling a knot of unease in my stomach. It was probably just an animal, I told myself. Or maybe some old pipes. But the rhythmic thumping continued, and it didn't sound like either of those things. Taking a deep breath, I pulled the cord. The hatch creaked open, and a rickety wooden ladder unfolded. I climbed up slowly, the ladder groaning under my weight. The attic was dark, but I could make out dusty old furniture and boxes stacked haphazardly. I switched on the flashlight on my phone and swept the beam across the room. Nothing seemed out of place, but the thumping noise persisted, coming from the far corner. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I realized the noise was coming from an old wooden trunk. The lid was slightly ajar, and it shook with each thump. I hesitated, every horror movie I'd ever seen flashing through my mind. But I had to know. I had to make sure it wasn't something dangerous. I gripped the edge of the trunk's lid and slowly lifted it. Inside, I saw a pile of old, dusty clothes. I shifted them aside, and my hand brushed against something cold and hard. I pulled out a small, ornate music box. It was old, intricately carved with strange symbols. The thumping had stopped. I held the music box, turning it over in my hands. It felt wrong, like it didn't belong here. Before I could think too much about it, I heard a whisper behind me. I whipped around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was no one there. My nerves frayed, I shoved the music box back into the trunk and closed the lid. I hurried back down the ladder, closing the hatch behind me. I told myself it was just an old house playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Back downstairs, I tried to relax, but the house no longer felt cozy. Every creak and groan made me jump. I checked on the kids again. They were still sound asleep. I settled back onto the couch, keeping the TV on low for some background noise. Mrs. Thompson and her husband returned around midnight. I was more than ready to leave. As I was about to head out the door, Mrs. Thompson handed me an envelope with my payment.
Thank you so much,
she said.
Did everything go okay?
I hesitated, then decided to mention the attic. I did hear some noises upstairs, though. From the attic, I think. Mrs. Thompson's face paled.
The attic?
She said slowly.
We don't use the attic. It's been locked for years.
I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and left as quickly as I could. As I walked home, I couldn't shake the image of the music box and the feeling that I had disturbed something that was better left alone. Once home, I tried to forget about the night. I told myself it was just an overactive imagination. But that didn't stop the sense of unease. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often, and every small noise in the house seemed amplified. A few nights later, I was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard it again. The same rhythmic thumping, but this time it was coming from within my own house. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to listen. It sounded like it was coming from the basement. I grabbed my phone and crept downstairs. The noise grew louder as I approached the basement door. With a deep breath, I turned the knob and descended the stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The basement was cold and cluttered, filled with old furniture and boxes. I switched on my flashlight and followed the sound to an old, wooden cabinet in the corner. The thumping continued, steady and unrelenting. I hesitated, my hand shaking as I reached for the cabinet door. I swung it open, and there it was, the same ornate music box from the Thompsons' attic. My blood ran cold. How had it gotten here? The thumping stopped as soon as I touched the music box. I picked it up, my mind racing with fear and confusion. Suddenly, the lid creaked open, and a haunting, melodic tune began to play. It was the same tune I had heard in my dreams. A cold breeze swept through the basement, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, but saw nothing but shadows. The music box played on, its melody filling the room. I backed away, clutching the box tightly, and hurried up the stairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, a loud, blood-curdling scream erupted from the basement. I froze, heart pounding, and turned to look back. The scream echoed, reverberating off the walls, chilling me to the core. I fumbled with the door, panic surging through me, and finally managed to slam it shut and lock it. I collapsed on the floor, breathless, the music box still playing its eerie tune. I knew I had to get rid of it, but a part of me feared what might happen if I did. For now, I keep it locked away in a drawer, hoping that the melody will eventually fade. But deep down, I know that whatever I disturbed that night at the Thompsons' house is not done with me yet. Every creak and groan in the house reminds me that some things, once awakened, are not so easily put to rest.